The deafening crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Willow Creek as Olivia Bennett clutched her sister's cold hand, watching helplessly as the last breath escaped her lungs. April 1876 had brought nothing but sorrow to the 20-year-old, and now, with Aliner's death, she was truly alone in the world. "I promise I'll make something of myself, Ellie," Olivia whispered, her voice breaking as tears streamed down her dirt-smudged cheeks. "I won't let your sacrifice be in vain." The small Montana Territory town had been their fresh start after fleeing Boston following their parents' death from influenza. Aliner, 5 years Olivia's senior, had used the last of their inheritance to purchase train tickets west, believing the frontier held promise for 2 young women with nothing but determination and each other. Now, barely 6 months after their arrival, a stray bullet from a saloon brawl had stolen Aliner's future, leaving Olivia to face the harsh frontier alone. The undertaker cleared his throat behind her. "Miss Bennett, about the burial costs." Olivia turned, her grief momentarily eclipsed by panic. "I haven't any money, Mr. Simmons. My sister kept what little we had." The man's sympathetic expression hardened. "I run a business, not a charity, Miss Bennett. Unless you can pay by week's end, I'm afraid your sister will be buried in the pauper's field." Olivia straightened her spine, summoning what little dignity remained. "I'll find the money. Please, just give me until Friday." Stepping into the blinding Montana sunlight, Olivia squinted at the bustling Main Street. Willow Creek had grown rapidly in the 3 years since silver had been discovered in the nearby hills. Miners, merchants, and opportunists of all kinds had flocked to the settlement, transforming it from a quiet outpost to a town teeming with both opportunity and danger. The boarding house where she and Aliner had taken a small room loomed ahead. Mrs. Finch, their stern landlady, would surely evict her now that Aliner's seamstress wages would no longer cover their rent. Olivia's meager earnings from washing dishes at the Silver Dollar Saloon barely covered their food costs. Pausing outside the general store, Olivia caught sight of her reflection in the window. Her auburn hair had escaped its pins, and her blue calico dress, her best and only good dress, was wrinkled from the hours spent at her sister's deathbed. She hardly recognized the gaunt, hollow-eyed young woman staring back at her. "Miss Bennett." Olivia turned to find Mr. Wilcox, the store owner, regarding her with poorly concealed pity. "I heard about your sister. My condolences." "Thank you," she replied automatically, the words feeling hollow. "If you're looking for work, I hear the Campbell Ranch is hiring. Old man Campbell's son just returned from back east and is expanding operations." He hesitated. "It's respectable work, miss, not like other opportunities for young women alone in these parts." Olivia flinched, understanding his meaning all too well. Several girls her age had already succumbed to the lure of the saloon's upper rooms, trading their virtue for security in this unforgiving land. "The ranch, you say? 6 miles north of town. The boy, well, man now, I suppose, Hugh Campbell. Back from some fancy college in Boston, hiring hands and house staff alike. Boston. The coincidence sent a chill down Olivia's spine. She'd fled that city to escape painful memories, only to find it reaching for her even here. "Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. I'll inquire tomorrow." As darkness fell, Olivia returned to the room she'd shared with Aliner, lighting a single candle to save kerosene. She'd spent the remainder of the day wandering the town, unable to face the emptiness waiting for her. Now, surrounded by her sister's belongings, the hairbrush on the dresser, the half-finished dress she'd been sewing for Mrs. Peterson's daughter, the finality of her loss crashed over her. Sinking onto the narrow bed, Olivia buried her face in Aliner's shawl, inhaling the lingering scent of lavender and tears. "What am I going to do without you, Ellie?" she whispered to the empty room. "You were all I had left." Dawn broke crisp and clear over the jagged Montana mountains, finding Olivia already awake, having barely slept. She dressed carefully in her second-best dress, a faded navy cotton with only one small patch at the elbow, and twisted her hair into a neat bun. Her reflection revealed a pale but composed young woman, the redness around her eyes the only evidence of her night of grief. The walk to the Campbell ranch stretched longer than the promised 6 miles, the dusty road winding through pine-covered hills and open meadows dotted with wildflowers. By the time the sprawling ranch house came into view, Olivia's feet ached in her worn boots, and the Montana sun had burned her fair skin despite her bonnet. The Campbell property exceeded her expectations. A large 2-story house of timber and stone dominated the landscape, surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and a massive barn. Fields stretched toward the distant mountains, where cattle grazed on the spring grass. This was no struggling homestead, but a thriving operation that spoke of considerable wealth. As Olivia approached the main house, a young man emerged from the barn leading a magnificent chestnut stallion. Even from a distance, she could tell he was tall, his broad shoulders emphasized by a simple white cotton shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing tanned, muscular forearms. A worn cowboy hat shaded his face, but there was something in his confident stride that marked him as more than a ranch hand. Drawing closer, Olivia cleared her throat. "Excuse me, sir. I'm looking for Mr. Hugh Campbell." The man turned, and Olivia found herself facing the most striking pair of green eyes she'd ever encountered. Framed by dark lashes and set in a sun-bronzed face, they assessed her with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "You found him," he replied, his voice deep with a hint of refinement that confirmed Mr. Wilcox's claim about his Eastern education. "What can I do for you, Miss Bennett?" "Olivia Bennett." She straightened her shoulders. "I heard you might be hiring, Mr. Campbell. I'm seeking employment." Hugh Campbell studied her for a long moment, taking in her worn but clean dress, her determined expression, and the unmistakable redness around her eyes. "What kind of employment are you looking for, Miss Bennett? We need help in the house with the cattle, and my father's just planted 50 acres that'll need tending." "I can cook, clean, and sew, sir. I'm not afraid of hard work." She hesitated. "I haven't much experience with cattle or farming, but I'm willing to learn whatever's needed." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Most ladies from town aren't interested in mucking stalls or branding calves. What brings you all the way out here alone, Miss Bennett?" The direct question caught Olivia off guard. She swallowed hard, fighting the fresh wave of grief threatening to overwhelm her. "My sister died yesterday, Mr. Campbell. She was all I had in the world. I need work to survive and to give her a proper burial." Hugh's expression softened immediately. "I'm sorry for your loss." He hesitated, glancing toward the house. "My mother passed 2 winters ago. I understand what it means to lose family." An unexpected connection flared between them, the recognition of shared grief, before Hugh cleared his throat and continued. "We do need help in the house. Mrs. Dawson, our housekeeper, is getting on in years and could use an extra pair of hands, especially with the new hands we're bringing on for the season." Hope fluttered in Olivia's chest. "I would be very grateful for the opportunity, sir. The position includes room and board," Hugh continued. "And $5 a week. Would that suit?" $5. It was more than she'd made in 2 weeks at the saloon. "Yes, that would be more than suitable. Thank you." Hugh nodded, then gestured toward the horse. "Let me stable Phoenix here, and I'll introduce you to Mrs. Dawson." As they walked toward the barn, he added casually, "When did you arrive in Montana Territory, Miss Bennett?" 6 months ago, from Boston." The coincidence that had struck her yesterday now seemed worth mentioning. "Mr. Wilcox mentioned you recently returned from there as well." Hugh's eyebrows rose slightly. "Harvard, though I spent more time learning about cattle breeding than attending to my studies, much to my father's dismay." He tied the horse to a post and turned to face her. "What brought you west from Boston?" "A fresh start," Olivia replied, the familiar half-truth coming easily to her lips. "My parents died, and my sister thought the West offered more opportunities than remaining in the city. And now your sister is gone too, Hugh said quietly, his eyes reflecting genuine sympathy. I'm truly sorry, Miss Bennett. The kindness in his voice nearly undid her carefully maintained composure. Thank you, she managed, blinking rapidly. Hugh seemed to sense her struggle. Come meet Mrs. Dawson. She'll get you settled. He paused. When is your sister's funeral to be? Friday, Olivia replied. If I can raise the funds for a proper burial by then. Hugh nodded thoughtfully. I'll have someone drive you into town, and I'll advance you 2 weeks' wages so you can see to your sister properly. Gratitude washed over Olivia with such force that for a moment she couldn't speak. Mr. Campbell, I don't know how to thank you. Hugh, he corrected. Everyone calls my father Mr. Campbell, and there's no need for thanks. It's what anyone would do. But as Olivia followed him toward the main house, she knew that wasn't true. In the 6 months she'd spent in Willow Creek, she'd learned that kindness was as rare and precious as the silver in the surrounding hills. Hugh Campbell, with his Harvard education and inherited wealth, could have easily dismissed her just another desperate woman in a land full of desperate people. Instead, he'd offered not just employment, but dignity. For the first time since Eleanor's death, Olivia felt a flicker of hope that perhaps she might survive this brutal frontier after all. The Campbell household ran with the precision of a well-oiled machine under Mrs. Dawson's stern but fair direction. The older woman had initially eyed Olivia with suspicion, muttering about city girls and their delicate constitutions, but Olivia's willingness to tackle even the most unpleasant tasks quickly won her grudging respect. By the end of her first week, Olivia had settled into a routine that began before dawn and ended well after dusk. She helped prepare meals for the family and the dozen ranch hands, laundered linens, scrubbed floors, and assisted with the endless chores that kept the large household functioning. The work was exhausting but honest, and each night she collapsed into the small but comfortable bedroom in the servants' quarters, too tired even to dream. Eleanor had been laid to rest in the town cemetery rather than the pauper's field, thanks to Hugh's advanced wages. The funeral had been small just to Olivia, the preacher, and, surprisingly, Hugh himself, who had insisted on accompanying her despite barely knowing her. He had stood respectfully at a distance during her private farewell, then helped her plant wildflowers around the simple wooden cross marking Eleanor's grave. She loved wildflowers, Olivia had explained, her voice thick with unshed tears. Said they were God's way of painting the meadows. Hugh had nodded, his own expression somber. My mother felt the same. She had my father plant a whole field of them near the house. That shared moment of grief had created an unspoken bond between them, though their interactions since had been limited by propriety and the demands of their respective roles on the ranch. On a warm evening in late May, nearly 3 weeks after Olivia's arrival at the Campbell ranch, she was hanging the last of the laundry on the line behind the house when the sound of approaching horses drew her attention. Hugh and his father, along with several hands, were returning from town earlier than expected, their expressions grim. William Campbell, a broad-shouldered man with silver-streaked dark hair and the same striking green eyes as his son, dismounted with the stiffness of age and injury a legacy. Olivia had learned of his service during the Civil War. Send a rider to the Morris place, he instructed one of the men. And another to Frederick's. We'll need every able body if the rumors are true. Hugh caught sight of Olivia and approached, his usual easy manner replaced by tense alertness. Is Mrs. Dawson inside? Yes, sir, preparing supper. Olivia hesitated. Is something wrong? Hugh glanced toward his father, who was already striding toward the house. Word in town is that Billy Shade and his gang were spotted crossing into the territory 3 days ago. They've hit 2 ranches north of here already. Olivia's stomach clenched. Even she had heard of the Shade gang notorious outlaws who specialized in cattle rustling and had no compunction about killing anyone who stood in their way. Will they come here? she asked, unable to keep the fear from her voice. Hugh's jaw tightened. We run the largest herd in the valley. If they're working their way south, we're likely next. His eyes met hers. Don't worry, Miss Bennett, we've dealt with rustlers before. But as he turned to follow his father, Olivia noticed something that sent a chill through her, despite the warm evening the way Hugh's hand rested on the revolver at his hip, as if expecting trouble to arrive at any moment. That night, an undercurrent of tension ran through the Campbell household. Extra men were posted as lookouts around the property, and William Campbell brought out an old trunk from which he distributed rifles and ammunition to the ranch hands. Olivia helped Mrs. Dawson prepare extra food for the men standing watch, all the while trying to ignore the knot of fear growing in her stomach. As she carried a tray of coffee to the bunkhouse, Olivia nearly collided with Hugh emerging from the barn. Careful, he said, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. That's hot business you're carrying. For the men on watch, she explained unnecessarily, acutely aware of his touch even through the fabric of her sleeve. Hugh nodded, then glanced toward the distant line of trees where the property bordered the foothills. You should stay close to the house for the next few days. No wandering off to pick wildflowers or whatnot. The reference to their shared moment at Aliner's grave caught Olivia by surprise. I wasn't planning to, Mr. Campbell. Hugh, he corrected automatically, then sighed. I don't mean to frighten you, but these men, they're dangerous, and they don't distinguish between cattle, property, or... He trailed off, but his meaning was clear, or women, Olivia finished for him. I understand, I'll be careful. Hugh studied her face in the fading light. You're handling this well. Most women would be hysterical at the thought of outlaws. A bitter laugh escaped her. Mr. Campbell, Hugh, I buried my sister less than a month ago. Before that, I buried both my parents. I've learned that hysteria is a luxury for those with someone to catch them when they fall. Something shifted in Hugh's expression, respect, perhaps, or deeper understanding. You have people who would catch you now, Olivia, he said quietly, using her given name for the first time. Don't forget that. Before she could respond, a shout came from the direction of the main house. Hugh's hand immediately went to his gun. Get inside, he ordered, all trace of gentleness gone from his voice. Now, Olivia hurried toward the kitchen entrance, her heart pounding. As she reached the door, she glanced back to see Hugh striding toward his father, who stood on the porch with a piece of paper in his hand. Whatever news it contained, judging by William Campbell's thunderous expression, it wasn't good. The next morning brought no attack, but instead a message delivered by a breathless young ranch hand from the neighboring Morris property. The Shade Gang had struck the Frederick Ranch overnight, stealing nearly 30 head of cattle and burning the barn. Mr. Frederick himself had been shot, though not fatally. They left this, the messenger explained, handing William a folded piece of paper. The Campbell patriarch read it silently, his face darkening with each word. What does it say, Father? Hugh asked, standing beside him on the porch where Olivia was sweeping, trying to appear busy while straining to hear every word. William handed the note to his son. They're offering us a choice. Pay them $5,000, or they'll take our cattle and burn the ranch to the ground. Hugh cursed under his breath. When? 3 days from now. They want the money delivered to Crow's Ridge by sunset on Thursday. We don't have that kind of cash on hand, Hugh said, his voice low but clear enough for Olivia to hear. Not with the new breeding stock we purchased. William's jaw tightened. Then we prepare to fight. He turned to the messenger. Tell Morris we're making a stand. Any man who can handle a rifle is welcome here. As the young man rode off, Hugh caught Olivia watching. Instead of appearing annoyed at her eavesdropping, he approached, his expression grave. You heard, she nodded, abandoning the pretense of sweeping. What can I do to help? Hugh seemed surprised by the question. Help? I may not know how to shoot, but I can load rifles, prepare bandages, help fortify the house. Determination filled her voice. This is my home now, too, at least for the time being. I won't sit idle while others defend it. A slow smile spread across Hugh's face, transforming his serious expression. "Miss Bennett, you continue to surprise me." He glanced toward the main house. "Talk to Mrs. Dawson about medical supplies," and he hesitated. "Perhaps it's time you learn to handle a firearm, just in case." That afternoon, while the men worked to reinforce the barn and corral fences, Hugh took Olivia behind the house where a row of bottles had been set up on a fallen log. "This is my mother's pistol," he explained, handing her a small revolver. "Easier for a woman's hands than the larger models." He showed her how to load it, how to cock the hammer, and how to aim along the barrel. "Now, squeeze the trigger gently, don't pull it." He stood close behind her, his arms extending alongside hers to demonstrate the proper stance. Olivia was acutely aware of his chest against her back, his breath stirring the loose tendrils of hair at her neck. Her first shot went wide, the recoil stronger than she'd expected. "I'm sorry," she said, embarrassed. "Try again," Hugh encouraged. "And remember, breathe out as you squeeze." The second shot shattered a bottle, sending glass flying. Olivia let out a startled laugh of triumph. "Well done," Hugh exclaimed. "You're a natural." For the next hour, he patiently guided her through the basics of handling the weapon, each successful shot building her confidence. By the time they finished, Olivia had hit more targets than she'd missed, and the weight of the pistol felt less foreign in her hand. "Keep it with you," Hugh instructed as they walked back to the house. "Hopefully you won't need it, but better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it," Olivia finished, quoting what had become one of Aliner's favorite sayings on their journey west. Hugh smiled, the expression warming his eyes. "Exactly." He hesitated, then added more seriously, "I've instructed the men to get you and Mrs. Dawson to the root cellar if there's trouble. It's the safest place on the property." "And where will you be?" The question slipped out before Olivia could stop herself, revealing more concern than was perhaps appropriate. "Wherever I'm needed," Hugh replied simply. Then, seeing her worried expression, he added, "But I don't plan on going anywhere, Miss Bennett. This land, this ranch, it's everything to my father, and to me." As they reached the kitchen door, Hugh paused. "Olivia," he said, dropping formality again, "I want you to know that whatever happens in the next few days, coming here wasn't a mistake. You've been a blessing to this household." The unexpected words struck Olivia to her core, stirring emotions she'd carefully suppressed since Aliner's death. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Hugh nodded once, his eyes lingering on her face a moment longer than necessary, before turning toward the barn where his father and the ranch hands were working. That night, Olivia lay awake in her small bedroom, Hugh's mother's pistol on the nightstand beside her. Through the open window came the sounds of men moving about the property, the occasional quiet voice giving instructions, the nickering of horses sensing the tension in the air. And beneath her fear for what the coming days might bring, a new feeling had taken root, a sense of belonging, of purpose, that she hadn't felt since losing Aliner. The Campbell Ranch was becoming more than just employment. It was becoming home. And Hugh Campbell was becoming far more than just an employer. The thought should have frightened her, but instead it brought a strange comfort as she finally drifted into sleep. The next 2 days passed in a flurry of preparations. Additional men arrived from neighboring ranches, swelling the Campbells' defensive force to nearly 30. The house was fortified, with furniture piled against windows and extra ammunition stockpiled in strategic locations. The most valuable horses were moved to a hidden canyon several miles away, while the main herd was brought closer to the ranch buildings where they could be better protected. Throughout it all, Olivia worked alongside Mrs. Dawson, preparing food for the men, organizing medical supplies, and helping wherever an extra pair of hands was needed. The older woman, impressed by Olivia's calm efficiency, had begun treating her less like a subordinate and more like a partner. "You've got grit, girl," Mrs. Dawson commented as they prepared bandages. "Reminds me of myself at your age when I first came west with my late husband. I don't feel particularly brave, Olivia admitted. Mostly I'm terrified. Brave doesn't mean not being scared, the older woman replied. It means doing what needs doing despite the fear. She eyed Olivia shrewdly. Young Mr. Campbell's taken a shine to you, you know. Heat rushed to Olivia's cheeks. He's simply been kind, Mrs. Dawson. The housekeeper snorted. I've known that boy since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Never seen him look at any woman the way he looks at you, like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve. Before Olivia could formulate a response, a commotion outside drew their attention. Through the kitchen window, they could see riders approaching, but not the expected outlaws. Instead, it was the sheriff from Willow Creek, accompanied by 2 deputies. Olivia followed Mrs. Dawson onto the porch, where William and Hugh were already greeting the lawmen. Campbell, the sheriff acknowledged, dismounting stiffly, got your message about Shade. Thought you could use some official assistance. William shook the man's hand. Appreciate it, Sheriff Taylor, though 3 more guns hardly evens the odds if Shade brings his full gang. 4, corrected a voice from behind the deputies. A tall, lean man with graying hair stepped forward, his weathered face bearing the marks of a hard life. Name's Jackson, U.S., Marshal, been tracking Shade for 6 months now. Hugh stepped forward. We've heard you're good at your job, Marshal. Jackson shrugged. Good enough to know Shade's traveling with at least 15 men, all armed to the teeth, and they've left 6 dead across 3 territories. His eyes scanned the ranch's defenses. You've done well here, but they'll still come at you hard if you don't pay. We don't have the money, William stated flatly. And even if we did, paying would just mark us as easy targets for every other outlaw passing through. The marshal nodded. Smart, but it means we're in for a fight. He turned to the sheriff. Taylor, let's check the perimeter, see where they're likely to hit first. As the lawmen moved off with William, Hugh remained on the porch, his expression troubled. Olivia, forgetting her place for a moment, moved to his side. What's wrong? Hugh glanced at her, then back toward the retreating figures. 6 dead, he said quietly, and that's just what they know about. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Olivia had come to recognize as a sign of his agitation. This isn't just about protecting cattle anymore. These men are killers. All the more reason to stand against them, Olivia said firmly. You can't let people like that dictate how you live. Hugh studied her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. You sound like my father. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He always says the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Wise words, Olivia agreed. And true. Hugh's expression softened. You should be inside, helping Mrs. Dawson. And you should be helping your father, not worrying about me, she countered, surprising herself with her boldness. This time Hugh's smile was genuine. You're right, as usual, Miss Bennett. He hesitated, then reached out to briefly touch her hand, a gesture so unexpected and intimate that Olivia felt her breath catch. Stay safe. With that, he strode off to join his father and the lawman, leaving Olivia standing on the porch, her hand tingling where his fingers had brushed against it, and her heart racing with emotions she wasn't ready to name. Thursday dawned clear and crisp, the rising sun painting the distant mountains with streaks of gold and crimson. The beauty of the scene belied the tension hanging over the Campbell ranch as men took up their positions and final preparations were made. By mid-morning, there was still no sign of the Shade gang. William Campbell paced the front porch, rifle in hand, while Hugh conferred with Marshal Jackson near the barn. The waiting had everyone on edge, with men jumping at shadows and false alarms. They're playing with us, Mrs. Dawson muttered as she and Olivia prepared a midday meal for the defenders, trying to wear down our nerves before they strike. Olivia nodded, glancing out the window for the 100th time that morning. It's working. As the day wore on with no attack, a dangerous sense of anticlimax began to settle over the ranch. Some of the men began to wonder aloud if the gang had moved on to easier targets or if the threat had been exaggerated. Don't be fools. Marshal Jackson warned when he overheard such talk. Shades like a rattlesnake most dangerous when you think he's gone. His words proved prophetic as the sun began to sink toward the western horizon. The first indication of trouble came from the furthest pasture, where a column of smoke rose against the darkening sky. Fire. Someone shouted, and men scrambled for horses. "It's a diversion," the marshal called out. "That's not where they'll hit us." He was right. Even as riders raced toward the burning field, gunfire erupted from the tree line to the east, where the cattle had been gathered. Under cover of the distraction, rustlers were already cutting into the herd, driving a portion of the valuable animals toward a gap in the fence. "Olivia, get to the cellar," Hugh ordered as he raced past the house, rifle in hand. "Take Mrs. Dawson and stay there until someone comes for you." Gunfire intensified as the ranch hands engaged with the rustlers. From her vantage point on the porch, Olivia could see riders moving among the cattle and the flashes of gunshots in the gathering dusk. The acrid smell of gunpowder filled the air, along with the panicked lowing of cattle and shouts of men. "Come on, girl," Mrs. Dawson urged, tugging at Olivia's arm. "We need to get to safety." But as they hurried toward the rear of the house where the root cellar entrance was located, a thunderous crash from the kitchen stopped them in their tracks. Turning, they saw 3 men burst through the back door, guns drawn. Well, drawled the leader, a tall man with a jagged scar running from his eye to his chin. "Looks like Campbell keeps his real treasures inside." Mrs. Dawson pushed Olivia behind her. "You get out of this house," the older woman demanded, her voice remarkably steady. "There's nothing for you here," the scarred man laughed. "I'd say there's at least 2 things worth taking." His eyes fixed on Olivia, who clutched Hugh's mother's pistol beneath her apron, her heart hammering in her chest. "The old woman can go," one of the other men suggested. "But the pretty one comes with us. Good bargaining chip." "Or just good company," the leader replied with a leer that made Olivia's skin crawl. "Come here, sweetheart. Don't make this difficult." He stepped forward, reaching for her, and Olivia acted on instinct. Drawing the pistol, she fired in one smooth motion, just as Hugh had taught her. The shot caught the outlaw in the shoulder, spinning him backward with a howl of pain and surprise. The other 2 men reacted instantly, raising their weapons, but Olivia fired again, forcing them to dive for cover. "Run," she shouted to Mrs. Dawson, shoving the older woman toward the parlor. As they fled, bullets splintered the doorframe behind them. They raced through the dining room and into the front hall, the sound of pursuit close behind. The front door stood tantalizingly close, but as they reached for it, it burst open to reveal yet another outlaw. Cornered, Olivia raised her pistol again, but before she could fire, a deafening shot rang out and the man in the doorway crumpled. Hugh stood behind him, his own gun still smoking. "This way," he shouted, grabbing Olivia's arm with one hand and Mrs. Dawson's with the other, pulling them onto the porch and toward the relative safety of the barn. All around them, the battle raged, men shouting, guns firing, cattle bellowing in panic. They had nearly reached the barn when Olivia heard Hugh grunt in pain. He stumbled, nearly falling, but kept moving. Only when they were inside the barn, door barred behind them, did Olivia see the spreading bloodstain on his shirt. "You're hit," she gasped, reaching for him. Hugh waved her concern away. "Just a graze. We need to get you somewhere safer." He turned to Mrs. Dawson. "The hayloft. They won't think to look there immediately." The older woman nodded, already climbing the ladder despite her age and bulk. Hugh gestured for Olivia to follow, but she hesitated. "Not until I've seen your wound," she insisted. "You're losing blood." A crash against the barn door emphasized the urgency of their situation. Hugh grimaced. "No time for that now. Go, Olivia, please." The plea in his eyes convinced her more than his words. Olivia scrambled up the ladder, Hugh following more slowly, clearly in pain despite his dismissal of the injury. From their vantage point in the hayloft, partially concealed by stacked bales, they had a limited view of the chaos outside through a small window. The main house was now partially ablaze, flames licking at the eastern wing. Men on horseback circled the property, exchanging gunfire with the ranch's defenders, who had taken positions behind walls and outbuildings. "They're trying to burn us out, Mrs." Dawson whispered, her face pale in the dim light. Hugh nodded grimly, pressing a handkerchief to his bleeding side. "Standard tactic, but they won't get away with it. Marshal Jackson knows what he's doing." As if to confirm his words, they heard a new volley of gunfire, followed by shouts of alarm from the attackers. Through the window, Olivia could see riders retreating toward the tree line, pursued by the sheriff's deputies and several ranch hands. "They're running," she exclaimed. "Some of them," Hugh cautioned. "Stay quiet, it's not over yet." His warning proved accurate when the barn door suddenly splintered beneath heavy blows. Someone was trying to break in. Hugh motioned for them to move deeper into the shadows of the hayloft, then positioned himself near the ladder, gun ready. The barn door finally gave way with a crash, and footsteps echoed on the wooden floor below. "Campbell," called a voice that made Olivia's blood run cold. The scarred man she had shot. "I know you're in here, boy, and I owe your little woman for this shoulder." Hugh remained perfectly still, his eyes locked on the space below. From their hiding place, Olivia could see the outlaw moving cautiously among the stalls, checking each one. The man's left arm hung uselessly at his side, his shirt soaked with blood where her bullet had struck him. "Come on out," the man continued. "Maybe I'll let the women live if you surrender nice and quiet." Hugh's jaw tightened, but he made no response. The outlaw moved closer to the ladder, gun in his good hand, peering upward into the shadows of the hayloft. Last chance, Campbell. In that moment, several things happened at once. The outlaw fired blindly into the hayloft, the bullet splintering a beam inches from where they crouched. Hugh returned fire, his shot catching the man in the chest. And outside, a tremendous cheer went up from the defenders. The outlaw crumpled to the floor, his gun clattering away. Hugh descended the ladder cautiously, kicking the fallen weapon well out of reach before checking the man's pulse. "He's dead," Hugh confirmed, looking up at Olivia and Mrs. Dawson. "And I think the fight's turning in our favor." They emerged from the barn to find the battle indeed ending. The remaining outlaws were fleeing, pursued by Marshal Jackson and several mounted ranch hands. The fire at the house had been contained to just one room, with a bucket brigade already dousing the last of the flames. And most importantly, the majority of the cattle remained safely in their pasture. William Campbell limped toward them, a bloody bandage around his thigh but his face triumphant. "They're running," he announced. "Jackson says we got at least 5 of them, including Shade himself." Relief washed over Olivia so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. Only then did she notice that Hugh was swaying on his feet, his face alarmingly pale. "Hugh needs a doctor," she said urgently, supporting him as he staggered. "He's been shot." William's victory smile vanished. "Get him to the house. Dr. Weber is tending the wounded in the parlor," with Mrs. Dawson's help, Olivia guided Hugh to the partially damaged house, where the local doctor had indeed set up a makeshift hospital. Several wounded men lay on makeshift pallets, while others with minor injuries waited their turn. Dr. Weber, a gruff older man with spectacles and a military bearing, examined Hugh's wound with efficient hands. "Bullet grazed your ribs," he pronounced. "Nasty but not life-threatening if we prevent infection." He looked at Olivia. "You his wife?" "No," she replied, blushing. "I work for the Campbells." The doctor raised an eyebrow but didn't comment further. "You'll do. Help me clean and bandage this. I've got men with worse injuries to tend." For the next hour, Olivia worked under Dr. Weber's terse instructions, cleaning Hugh's wound with carbolic solution, stitching the deepest part of the gash, and finally wrapping his torso in clean bandages. Throughout the process, Hugh remained stoically silent, though she could feel him tense with pain whenever she touched a particularly tender area. "You should rest now," she told him when they had finished, helping him into a clean shirt that Mrs. Dawson had brought. Hugh shook his head. Too much to do. The men need to see that I'm all right. The men need a leader who won't collapse from blood loss, Olivia countered, surprising herself with her firmness. Rest for an hour, then you can go be heroic all you want. A smile tugged at Hugh's lips despite his pain. You're becoming quite bossy, Miss Bennett. Someone has to be sensible around here, she replied, helping him to a chair. I'll bring you some broth. As she turned to leave, Hugh caught her hand. Olivia, he said softly, his green eyes intense despite his exhaustion, you saved Mrs. Dawson's life today, and mine, I won't forget that. The simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep within her. We saved each other, she replied. That's what family does. The word slipped out before she could consider its implications, but Hugh didn't seem to find it presumptuous. Instead, his expression softened further, and he squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. Yes, he agreed. That's exactly what family does. The aftermath of the attack brought a flurry of activity to the Campbell ranch. Repairs had to be made to damaged buildings, wounded men tended, and normal operations resumed as quickly as possible. Marshal Jackson and his prisoners departed for the territorial capital, promising to return when the surviving gang members stood trial. Through it all, Olivia found herself taking on increasing responsibility, coordinating the household's recovery efforts while Mrs. Dawson nursed a sprained ankle sustained during their escape. To her surprise, William Campbell began consulting her on matters beyond the domestic sphere, valuing her practical suggestions for reorganizing the ranch's defenses and improving emergency procedures. And Hugh, despite Dr. Weber's orders to rest, threw himself into the work of rebuilding, though Olivia noticed he often paused to press a hand to his injured side when he thought no one was watching. 2 weeks after the attack, with the ranch finally returning to normal, Olivia was hanging laundry in the late afternoon sunshine when Hugh approached, leading 2 saddled horses. "Ride with me," he asked, offering her the reins of a gentle mare she recognized as his late mother's favorite mount. Olivia hesitated. "I should finish the laundry." "Mrs. Dawson says you haven't taken a moment's rest in 2 weeks," Hugh countered, "and there's something I want to show you." Curiosity overcame her sense of duty. "Where are we going?" "Not far," Hugh promised. "Can you ride?" "My father taught me, though it's been years," Olivia admitted. "We had to sell our horses after he died." Hugh helped her mount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than strictly necessary. Then he swung easily into his own saddle, hiding a wince as the movement pulled at his healing wound. They rode in companionable silence, following a narrow trail that wound up into the foothills east of the ranch. The June afternoon was perfect warm sunshine, a gentle breeze carrying the scent of pine and wildflowers, and the soft rhythm of the horses' hooves on the packed earth. After about 20 minutes, they crested a small rise, and Hugh reined in his horse. "We're here." Olivia gasped at the vista spread before them. From this elevation, they could see the entire valley the Campbell Ranch laid out like a miniature model, the silver ribbon of the river winding through green pastures, and in the distance, the small cluster of buildings that was Willow Creek. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Hugh nodded, his eyes not on the view but on her face, watching her reaction. "My father brought my mother here on their first anniversary. It became their special place." He dismounted and helped Olivia down, leading her to a flat boulder perfectly positioned as a natural bench overlooking the valley. Every year on their anniversary, no matter what was happening at the ranch, they would ride up here together. Hugh continued, sitting beside her. "After she died, my father couldn't bear to come anymore, but I find myself drawn here when I need to think." The fact that he had chosen to share this private sanctuary with her was not lost on Olivia. "Thank you for bringing me," she said softly. Hugh turned to face her, his expression unusually vulnerable. "Olivia, I brought you here because I need to ask you something, and this seemed like the right place to do it." Her heart began to race. "What is it?" "These past weeks, seeing how you've become such a vital part of the ranch, how you've faced danger without flinching, how you've helped us all heal after the attack." He took a deep breath. "I know it hasn't been long, but sometimes life shows you what matters in the most unexpected ways." Olivia sat perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe as Hugh took her hands in his. "When you first arrived at the ranch, you told me your sister had left you alone in the world," he said. "And I promised myself then that I would look after you, make sure you had a safe place to land." His voice softened. "But it's become much more than that. I don't just want to give you safety, Olivia. I want to give you a home, a family, a future." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes as she realized where his words were leading. "I'm not a man who believes in wasting time once I know what I want," Hugh continued, his green eyes earnest. "And I want you, Olivia Bennett, as my wife, my partner, the mother of my children someday." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "This was my mother's," he explained, tipping a delicate gold ring with a small diamond into his palm. "My father gave it to me after the attack, said he'd never seen two people more suited for each other." Olivia stared at the ring, emotions overwhelming her. It was too soon, too sudden, and yet, in her heart, it felt absolutely right. In the short time she'd known Hugh Campbell, he had shown her not just kindness but respect, treating her as an equal partner rather than a servant or a fragile creature to be protected. "Olivia Bennett," Hugh said formally, "will you marry me? Will you let me be the one who stays by your side, no matter what life brings?" The echo of his words, so similar to what he had promised when she first arrived, desperate and alone, broke the last of her hesitation. "Yes," she whispered, tears flowing freely now. "Yes, Hugh Campbell, I will marry you." His face transformed with joy as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he cupped her face in his hands and kissed her tentatively at first, then with growing confidence as she responded, her arms circling his neck. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Hugh rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Olivia Bennett. I think I've loved you since the day you stood in my barn and told me you weren't afraid of hard work." Olivia laughed softly, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain such happiness. "And I love you, Hugh Campbell. You gave me hope when I had none left." They remained on the hillside until the sun began to set, talking of their future together, the wedding they would have in the fall after the harvest, the improvements they wanted to make to the ranch, the children they hoped would fill their home with laughter. As they rode back to the ranch in the gathering dusk, Olivia looked down at the ring sparkling on her finger and thought of Alina. "She would have liked you," she told Hugh. "My sister. She always said I needed someone as stubborn as I am." Hugh laughed. "I wish I could have known her. But I promise you this, Olivia, you'll never be alone again. Whatever comes, we'll face it together." And as the lights of the ranch appeared before them, warm and welcoming in the twilight, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just a husband, but a true partner, someone who would stand beside her through whatever joys and sorrows life might bring. News of their engagement spread quickly through the ranch and into Willow Creek. To Olivia's surprise, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Mrs. Dawson declared she'd known it all along, while William Campbell embraced Olivia and welcomed her to the family with tears in his eyes. "My son has his mother's good sense in choosing a wife," he told her. "She would have adored you, my dear." The ranch hands presented them with a hand-carved hope chest, each man having contributed to its creation during evening hours after work. Even the townspeople of Willow Creek, who had initially viewed Olivia with the suspicion often directed at newcomers, now greeted her warmly when she accompanied Hugh on supply runs. "Nothing like fighting off outlaws together to cement a romance, Mr. Wilcox commented with a wink when they announced their engagement in his store. "Knew you two would make a fine match when I sent you out there." Summer passed in a golden haze of happiness for Olivia. While continuing her duties at the ranch, she also began learning the business side of operations from Hugh and William, determined to be a true partner to her future husband. Hugh, in turn, insisted on teaching her to ride properly, gifting her with the gentle mare she had ridden on the day of their engagement. "She's yours now," he said, pressing the reins into Olivia's hands. "Every ranch wife needs her own horse." They set their wedding date for October 15th, after the fall cattle drive and harvest were complete. Mrs. Dawson and several women from neighboring ranches helped Olivia create a wedding dress from fine fabric, ordered specially from Denver, while Hugh and his father expanded the master bedroom in the main house to accommodate the newlyweds. "Though I expect we'll build our own place eventually," Hugh told Olivia as they walked the property one evening in late August. "Perhaps on the East Ridge, with a view of the sunrise." "I'd like that," Olivia agreed, leaning into his side as they watched the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. "But there's no rush. I'm happy wherever you are." Hugh stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. "Are you really, Olivia? Happy, I mean." "This isn't the life you planned when you came west." Olivia considered the question carefully. "No," she admitted. "When Alina and I left Boston, we thought we'd open a dress shop, live in town, be independent businesswomen." A soft smile touched her lips. "But life has a way of changing our plans, doesn't it? I couldn't have imagined this," she gestured to the vast ranch stretching around them, "but now I can't imagine wanting anything else." Hugh studied her face, as if searching for any doubt. "I just want to be sure you won't regret choosing this life. It's not easy being a rancher's wife." "I know that," Olivia assured him. "I've seen how hard Mrs. Dawson works, how many responsibilities fall to her with your mother gone." "But Hugh," she placed a hand on his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm, "I'm not afraid of hard work, remember? And any life worth living comes with challenges." Hugh covered her hand with his own. "You're remarkable, Olivia Bennett. Every day I wonder what I did to deserve you." "You stayed," she said simply. "When I was at my lowest point, you promised to be the one who stayed, and you kept that promise." Their wedding day dawned clear and crisp, the aspens in the foothills ablaze with autumn gold against the evergreen backdrop. Olivia stood at the window of her room, soon to be her former room, watching the sunrise and thinking of Alina. "I wish you could be here," she whispered to her sister's memory. "But I think perhaps you guided me here somehow. This is where I was meant to be." A knock at the door interrupted her reverie. Mrs. Dawson entered, carrying a small package wrapped in tissue paper. "This came for you yesterday," the housekeeper explained. "From Boston, I thought you might want to open it before the ceremony." Curious, Olivia unwrapped the package to find a delicate lace handkerchief and a letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the return address belonged to her parents' former neighbor, Mrs. Whittaker. "My dear Miss Bennett," the letter began. "News of your upcoming marriage reached me through a mutual acquaintance who recently traveled to Montana Territory. I was so relieved to hear you are well and have found happiness after the tragic circumstances that drove you and Alina from Boston." Olivia's hands trembled slightly as she continued reading. Mrs. Whittaker explained that, after the Bennetts' departure, she had discovered something Alina had left behind their mother's wedding handkerchief, carefully preserved in tissue paper and hidden in a secret compartment of her sewing box. "I believe Alina intended to give this to you on your wedding day," Mrs. Whittaker wrote. "As she cannot do so herself, I am honored to fulfill this duty in her stead. May it bring you the same joy in marriage that your mother found, and may your new life in the West be blessed with love and prosperity." Tears filled Olivia's eyes as she held the delicate lace to her cheek. It still carried the faintest hint of her mother's lavender perfume, triggering memories of a happy childhood before illness had stolen both her parents. "She's with you today," Mrs. Dawson said softly, understanding without being told the significance of the handkerchief. "They all are." Olivia nodded, carefully tucking the precious memento into her sleeve. "Yes," she agreed, "and they would approve of Hugh. They would be happy for me." The ceremony took place at noon beneath an arch of autumn branches erected in the ranch's front yard. Nearly everyone from Willow Creek attended, along with families from neighboring ranches, over 100 guests in all, a testimony to the Campbell family's standing in the community. William Campbell, resplendent in his best suit, walked Olivia down the makeshift aisle to where Hugh waited, looking both nervous and joyful in equal measure. The local preacher performed the service, his words carrying clearly in the crisp October air as Hugh and Olivia exchanged vows and rings. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher concluded. "Mr. Campbell, you may kiss your bride." Hugh's kiss was tender and reverent, a promise of the life they would build together. When they turned to face their guests as husband and wife, the cheer that went up seemed to echo all the way to the mountains. The celebration continued well into the evening, with tables laden with food, music from local fiddle players, and dancing in the barn cleared specially for the occasion. As twilight fell, lanterns were lit, casting a golden glow over the festivities. During a brief moment alone, Hugh led Olivia away from the crowd to a quiet spot near the garden. "Happy, Mrs. Campbell?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly, reaching up to touch his face. "Are you?" Hugh's smile was answer enough, but he elaborated anyway. "I have everything I ever wanted: the ranch, a future to build, and most importantly, you by my side to share it all." He kissed her forehead gently. "I love you, Olivia Campbell." The new name sent a thrill through her. "And I love you, Hugh Campbell, today, tomorrow, and all the days after." As they rejoined their guests for the final dances of the evening, Olivia caught sight of William Campbell watching them, his expression one of profound satisfaction. He raised his glass in a silent toast when he noticed her looking, and Olivia smiled back, feeling truly part of a family again for the first time since losing her parents and a leaner. Later that night, after the guests had departed and the ranch had settled into silence, Olivia stood in what was now their bedroom, removing the pins from her hair while Hugh stoked the fire against the October chill. The intimacy of the moment, their first true privacy as husband and wife, brought a blush to her cheeks despite her determination to appear calm. Hugh seemed to sense her nervousness. He approached slowly, taking the hairbrush from her hands. "May I?" he asked quietly. At her nod, he began to gently brush out her long auburn hair, his touch reverent. "My mother used to say a woman's hair was her glory," he murmured. "I've wanted to do this since the first day I saw you, with your hair coming loose from its pins outside the general store. You remember that?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I remember everything about that day," Hugh confirmed. "How tired you looked, how determined despite your grief, how you stood straight and proud even though you were clearly afraid." He set down the brush and turned her to face him. "I think I started falling in love with you even then, though I didn't recognize it for what it was." Olivia placed her hands on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "And when did you know for certain?" "The night of the attack," Hugh replied without hesitation. "When I saw you in the barn, pistol in hand, having saved Mrs. Dawson and yourself through your own courage and quick thinking, I knew then that I never wanted to be parted from you." He bent to kiss her, and this time there was nothing tentative about it. This was a husband's kiss, passionate, claiming, yet still tender with love. Olivia responded in kind, her initial nervousness melting away in the warmth of their shared desire. Later, as they lay entwined beneath the quilts, Olivia rested her head on Hugh's chest, listening to his heartbeat slow toward sleep. "Hugh," she whispered. "MMM," he responded drowsily. "Thank you for being the one who stayed." His arms tightened around her. "Always, my love, always." 5 years later, October 1881, the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains of the east-facing bedroom window, rousing Olivia from a deep sleep. For a moment she lay still, savoring the warmth of Hugh's body curved protectively around hers, his arm draped over her expanding waistline where their third child grew. From down the hall came the patter of small feet, followed by a stage whisper that wasn't really a whisper at all. "SHH, William. Mama and Papa are still sleeping." Olivia smiled, knowing what would come next. Sure enough, the bedroom door creaked open, and two small figures appeared in the doorway. Alina, nearly 4 years old, with her father's green eyes and her mother's auburn hair. And William, just past his 2nd birthday, still chubby with baby fat and sporting a head of dark curls. Hugh stirred behind her. "I hear intruders," he murmured against her neck. "Dangerous ones." Alina giggled, abandoning all pretense of stealth as she ran toward the bed. "Papa, it's just us." "Even more dangerous than I thought," Hugh declared, sitting up to catch his daughter as she launched herself onto the bed. William followed more cautiously, needing Olivia's assistance to climb up. "Happy anniversary, Papa," Alina announced proudly. "We made you and Mama a surprise." "Did you now?" Hugh asked, settling her on his lap while Olivia cuddled William against her side. "What kind of surprise?" "Grandpa helped," Alina explained. "And Mrs. Dawson, it's breakfast with pancakes and everything." On cue, William Campbell appeared in the doorway, carrying a tray laden with food. At 65, he moved more slowly than he once had, his hair now completely silver, but his green eyes, so like Hugh's and little Alina's, still sparkled with life. "Happy anniversary," he said, setting the tray carefully on the bedside table. 5 years. Seems like yesterday and forever all at once." "Best 5 years of my life," Hugh replied, reaching for Olivia's hand and squeezing it gently. They had built their own house 3 years ago, just as Hugh had promised, on the east ridge overlooking the valley. William had insisted on it after Alina was born, saying the main house was too crowded for a growing family. But he visited daily, doting on his grandchildren and still actively involved in running the ranch, despite officially turning operations over to Hugh the previous year. As they shared the anniversary breakfast in bed, children chattering and stealing bites from their plates, Olivia reflected on how much her life had changed since that desperate day when she'd walked the dusty road to the Campbell ranch, seeking any work that would allow her to bury her sister with dignity. The ranch had prospered under Hugh's management, expanding to nearly twice its original size. The house she had helped design was everything she'd dreamed of: spacious but cozy, with large windows to capture the magnificent views, and a wraparound porch where they spent summer evenings watching the sunset, and their family had grown. Alina had been born almost exactly 9 months after their wedding, followed by William 2 years later. Now a 3rd child was on the way, due in early spring. Hugh hoped for another daughter. Olivia suspected they were having twins, though she hadn't shared this intuition with him yet. After breakfast, William took the children back to the main house to help Mrs. Dawson feed the chickens, a task that delighted them endlessly, leaving Hugh and Olivia alone. "I have something for you," Hugh said, retrieving a package from his dresser drawer. "An anniversary gift." Olivia unwrapped it to find a leather-bound book. Opening it, she gasped softly. Inside were sketches, dozens of them, of her, the children, the ranch, all rendered with surprising skill. "Hugh, these are beautiful. I didn't know you could draw like this." He smiled, slightly embarrassed. "I've been practicing in secret. My mother used to sketch. I found her old materials in the attic last year and thought I'd try my hand." He turned to a specific page, showing a detailed drawing of Olivia sitting on the porch, a sleeping infant Alina in her arms. "This is from memory our first week in this house." Olivia traced the lines with her fingertip, touched beyond words. "It's perfect, thank you." "I thought," Hugh hesitated, "I thought we could fill it with our family story, for the children and their children someday. So they'll know where they came from." The thoughtfulness of the gift brought tears to Olivia's eyes. "I love it, and I love you, Hugh Campbell." Hugh gathered her into his arms, careful of her pregnant belly. "And I love you, Olivia Campbell, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow." Later that afternoon, after a quiet celebration with William and Mrs. Dawson, Hugh saddled their horses for what had become an anniversary tradition, a ride to the special overlook where he had proposed 5 years earlier. "Are you sure you're up to riding?" he asked, eyeing her pregnancy with concern. Olivia laughed. "The baby isn't due for months, Hugh, and Dr. Weber said moderate exercise is good for me." She patted her mare's neck. "Besides, Daisy here is the gentlest horse in Montana territory. We'll be fine." The October day was perfect, crisp, and clear, the aspens glowing gold in the afternoon sun. They rode at a leisurely pace, Hugh pointing out improvements to the ranch's northern pastures as they passed. When they reached the overlook, Hugh helped Olivia dismount and led her to their special boulder. The view was as magnificent as ever, the ranch sprawling below them, the river winding through the valley, and in the distance, the growing town of Willow Creek. "It never gets old, does it?" Olivia said, settling onto the rock with a contented sigh. "This view." "Never," Hugh agreed, though his eyes were on her rather than the landscape. "Just like my view right now." Olivia blushed, still not entirely used to his open admiration even after 5 years of marriage. "Flatterer. Truth-teller," he countered, sitting beside her and taking her hand in his. "You're more beautiful to me now than the day we met, Olivia. Motherhood suits you." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Everything suits me as long as I'm with you. I never thought I could be this happy, Hugh, not after losing everyone I loved." "Not everyone," he reminded her gently. "Eleanor led you to me. I like to think she knew what she was doing, guiding you to Willow Creek, to our ranch." The thought brought a fresh perspective to Olivia's grief, transforming it into something almost sweet. "Perhaps she did," she agreed. "She always was the practical one, making plans for both of us." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the shadows lengthen across the valley as the sun began its descent toward the western mountains. "Do you ever regret it?" Hugh asked suddenly. "Marrying me, choosing this life?" Olivia turned to look at him, surprised. "Regret? Why would you ask such a thing?" Hugh shrugged, a gesture that reminded her of their first meeting. "You were so young, we married quickly. Sometimes I wonder if you ever wish you'd had more time to see what else life might have offered you." "Hugh Campbell," Olivia said firmly, taking his face between her hands. "Listen to me very carefully. In 5 years of marriage, through childbirth and drought and every other challenge we've faced, I have never not for a single moment regretted choosing you. You are the best decision I ever made." The worry in his eyes eased. "Even when I track mud into your clean kitchen and forget to mend the fence when I promised?" Olivia laughed. "Even then, though perhaps a little less in those specific moments." Hugh pulled her close, his arms encircling her with the familiar strength that had become her sanctuary. "I used to worry about filling my father's boots," he confessed. "Running the ranch, living up to his reputation in the territory. But from the moment you agreed to marry me, my greatest concern has been deserving you being the husband and father our family needs." "Oh, Hugh," Olivia sighed, resting her head against his chest. "You've done that and more. Our children adore you. The ranch is thriving." "And she lifted her face to his, "I fall more in love with you every day." Hugh bent to kiss her, tender and reverent despite the passion that still flared between them after 5 years. "We should head back," he said reluctantly when they parted. "The little ones will be waiting, and you shouldn't be out in the evening chill in your condition." As he helped her mount Daisy, Olivia suddenly placed a hand on her stomach, her eyes widening. "What is it?" Hugh asked, instantly concerned. "The baby." Olivia smiled, taking his hand and placing it where she had felt the movement. "Babies," she corrected. "I think we're having twins, Hugh." His expression transformed from worry to wonder as he felt the distinct flutter of not one but 2 tiny lives beneath his palm. "Twins," he repeated, awestruck. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without Dr. Weber confirming it," Olivia replied. "I've suspected for a while now. I'm bigger than I was with Eleanor or William at this stage, and the movements feel different, like they're coming from 2 directions at once." Hugh whooped with joy, startling the horses. "Twins! My God, Olivia, you're amazing." He helped her mount, then swung into his own saddle, his face alight with excitement. "Wait until we tell Father. He'll be beside himself." As they rode home in the gathering dusk, Olivia looked over at her husband, this man who had promised to be the one who stayed when she was most alone in the world, and who had kept that promise through 5 years of marriage. He caught her gaze and smiled, his love for her as clear as the day he had first proposed on this very hillside. In that moment, Olivia felt a sense of completion that went beyond happiness. She had lost so much parents, sister, the life she had once expected to live. But in their place, she had found something even more precious. A true partnership, a family built on love and mutual respect, and a home that extended beyond the walls of their house to encompass the entire beautiful valley spread below them. Eleanor had brought her west, seeking a fresh start. And against all odds, in this wild, sometimes harsh frontier, Olivia had found not just survival, but a life more fulfilling than she could have ever imagined, all because a cowboy had promised to be the one who stayed and had kept his word.